Okay, and then share. Is anybody else acting as a host to let people in?
Me,
Good.
yeah, I'm
Oh,
letting
good.
people
Okay,
in.
great, cool. And let's do one more thing to get rid of. Oh, okay, got it. A little bit about us. We are owned by the Coffin Foundation, and we meet every Wednesday at 9 o'clock in the morning. We have 350 groups across the country, so that all meet at the same time. But if you want to get on and hear somebody in another area, you can get on at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock with the time difference. Want to welcome all your visitors to the room. And if you are new, would you please raise your hand so that we can see you and have you introduce yourselves to everyone?
All right, I
Okay.
don't use Zoom a lot,
Lynette,
but I would raise my hand if I could figure that out. So sorry.
why don't you start? Why don't you start? Go ahead, Scott, and then I'll get Lynette.
Scott, you want me to start?
Yeah, why don't you start since you
Okay.
said you're talking?
My name is Scott Fader. I'm manager of Qualify LLC, a digital marketing and advertising firm in Ashburn, Virginia. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
Welcome. And Lynette, you're new too?
Yes, I am. Good morning, Lynette Beckham Gaskins. I'm the owner of Magnolia Creations LLC. We're a meeting and event planning company located in Fairfax, Virginia. I met John last night at a business networking event, and here I am.
Welcome, Linda.
Fantastic. Did I miss anybody?
Dan Taylor.
Oh, Dan, go ahead.
Hi, yes, I'm Dan Taylor. I am in Arlington, and I run a SEO agency. So I help in PPC. So I help people get traffic, basically create free reports for them to help them figure out what's wrong with the site. Happy to be here. Heard about 1MillionCups and wanted to see what it's all about.
Welcome. Next thing we like everybody to do is to check in. And the reason why we like that is one, we like the statistics. We're actively trying to grow the group, so please invite guests. And then we use the widgets and all sorts of premiums we get from corporate as little spiffs for you when we meet live and have 1 million cups and t-shirts. So please sign in with the QR code. We can't do this without our team of organizers and brand ambassadors. Today, we've got on the organizing team, we've got John here and we've got Amy here. And I don't know if James came in yet. I'm not sure.
Yep.
And on our organizers, I didn't see our list of everybody. It is John Foster's here, isn't he? I would assume.
I am.
Yeah. A little bit more about us, and this is really important. We are national, as I talked about, and we're also local in about 350 chapters around the country, and we are a mastermind group, which is one of the things that I think is important to talk about as a differentiator. We're not a referral group per se, but we build relationships, and in that process, we are able to help people and refer folks to people we know that may be able to help them. And it's really important. We're very education focused to help entrepreneurs with where they may be stuck or writing a value proposition or whatever they might need to expand their business. Our key pillars are presentations, not pitches. So please don't ask for money. We're authentic connections, not networking. We're run for the community, by the community. We are all volunteers, and we're radically and intentionally inclusive. Everybody is invited. John, do you want to talk about Mason really quickly? And then, Amy, I'll have you talk about 48 Blocks. These are our sponsors, and we can't do anything without our sponsors. It's really important.
So sure, George Mason is one of our sponsors where we hold our first of the month meeting. It's hybrid, and the MEC has just supported us in so many ways. But if you're in that area of town and you need a level of office services, from occupancy just to mail and phone, the MEC Center is very special. Plus, they have a mentoring program. So if you're a startup and you need guidance, they've got a structured program for you to participate and follow. So kudos to them. It's a great institution and a great sponsor for 1 Million Cups.
And each month we have a member, and this month it's Amy, who is our member of the month, and she will talk a little bit about 48 Blocks.
She will if she can remember how to use her computer. Good morning, all. I own 48 Blocks Fine Candy. We are a gourmet candy manufacturer specializing in marshmallows, fruit pâtés, and caramels. We're based currently in Falls Church, Virginia, and I may have an update on a new location coming in the next couple weeks. Shout out to Alex for that. If you are looking for unique corporate gifts, we have marshmallows by the dozen in our 12 days of Christmas flavors. We also have advent calendars and s'mores kit. Please check out the website 48blocksfinecandy.com, or you can email us info@48blocksfinecandy.com, and I'll drop the contact information in the chat. Thanks, Melinda.
Thanks, Amy. Thanks, John. Now a little bit about our meetings and how we work. We use the chat for our presentation. So if you've got ideas and things you want to say, please do put it into the chat if you can. We will try to take notes during the conversation so that we can share it. This way everybody can go back and look at the chat later and see summaries of the meeting as well as the video, which we are also recording. Just a little bit about be nice. Don't talk too long. Let somebody else speak too. And don't, when you're asking a question, then ask another question and another question. Put your hand up again and we will call on you so that you can ask another question. And again, as I said, be nice. If you don't agree with somebody, just say, I really appreciate what you said, John. I also do it this way, or whatever it might be, just so you're polite with everyone. And today we're having a town hall. We're going to talk about how podcasts could grow your business. We as organizers were talking on Monday, and we said, this is a really good hot topic because podcasts are a really good tool to use to expand your business to potential customers as well as your customers and get the word out about the things that you're doing. Is James here to take over at this point?
I am, Melinda. Go ahead and stop sharing and I'll take over the slides.
Okay, that would be great. So I'm stopping my share.
Sharing not turned on. Send a request. Did you get a request, John?
Oh, we have to make you John has to make you a
I got it.
Begrudgingly, I did it, James. Very
Good
begrudging.
man. Love it. Okay. All right. So as Melinda says, this came up on Monday, talking about podcasts. Now, in the interest of full transparency, I am not a podcasting expert. I do have a podcast. And so hopefully you're going to learn from some of the howling mistakes that I made when I started. But the idea being is that we actually had a presenter that came in some time ago and then came back last week. And his name is Dumi Mabina. And Dumi has launched a podcasting platform for beginners through Georgetown University. Really, really smart guy. Him and his partner launched this podcast, and the idea being that podcasting as a thing can be pretty intense, especially when you get to the editing part of the actual podcast. So we thought it might be fun to actually do a town hall and get your guys' input as to who's doing what, when, where. So that's what we're going to do, right? As I said, I'm not a podcasting expert. I'm going to facilitate this conversation the best I can. I'm definitely going to share some stuff with you that hopefully, if you're in that thought process of, should I have a podcast? Should I not have a podcast? That maybe this will kind of steer you in one direction or another. So just because I think we've got enough people here, I don't have to do anything dramatic, but just by a showy hands, putting your hands up, does anyone have their own podcast? Like, who has their own podcast that's online right now? Me and Michael, that's it. 2 years. Right. Awesome. This is going to be a very short conversation. I'm just kidding. So, right. So there's only a couple of us online right now that actually have our own podcast. Hands up if you listen to a podcast. Right. So most of us then, right, are listening, but not many of us actually have it, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that. So just to get some context, right? And by the way, this isn't a presentation by James. I'm just trying to give you some context around what we're going to have a conversation around. There's like 4.25 million podcasts, like worldwide, with 505 million listeners. Like, this is a big deal, right? This is not a small thing. It's a really big deal. And more than half the population of the US have either listened to a podcast and are listening to a podcast. And the vast majority of those listeners are subscribing to more than 5. So it's a thing, right? It's a thing, and it's not going to go away. The number one platform that people are listening to now is Spotify, right? 35.8% of the population of podcasters have got it on the Spotify platform. Apple is number 2 at 33.4. And then there's everybody else, right? So the rest of the population, the rest of the platforms are literally single digits in terms of percentage of hosting the actual podcast itself. The other interesting fact that I found out is that in the US, it's a $2 billion industry. Now, what I wasn't able to find out is, what is that $2 billion made up of? Like, how does that actually generate that revenue? For a lot of people, it comes through advertising, clearly, right? Where you're doing, and most of that is going to be through video, through YouTube. But a lot of advertisers are still getting into the audio-only podcasting business. If you understand the podcasting industry a little bit, you're going to know that there's 2 ways you can do this. You can do video, and you can do audio. I've done both. They're both really hard, right? But you can do both. And so here's what I'd like to do. For you guys that are listening to podcasts, now we're going to do breakouts, but I think, John, with the number of people in the room, can we just do this without the breakout?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Right.
Go for it, man.
Yeah.
So do this, because I think it'll make it easier. Either put your hand up if you want to tell us about the podcast that you listen to, and or put them in the chat, and Melinda can pick it up from the chat and let us know. I'll kick it off, right, just to get us going. So there's a couple of podcasts that I listen to. One is, I love Joe Rogan for a number of reasons, right? And Joe Rogan's like the number 1 podcast in the world. He's not everyone's cup of tea. I get it, right? But it has some really interesting guests. So I kind of pick and choose. Like, if someone's on that I'm interested in, I'll go and listen to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's a 3-hour podcast. It's not. It's a show. It's not really a podcast. It's actually a show. So I love that. Another one I love is Amy Porterfield. Right, I'm a massive Amy Porterfield fan. She's a marketing expert, online marketing expert. She's incredibly sweet. I've met her a bunch of times. So I like to follow her. Now, what she does is just give you good marketing tips via her podcast, right? And she's got a pretty big following through that. So that's two of my favorites. So what about you guys? Who's listening to what and why?
Hey, James, I'll jump in.
Yeah, go.
So yeah, I guess I'll second Joe Rogan as well. And I think one of the things about podcasts, and I listen to a bunch of them, but the thing I find is that I'll pick and choose, the either the guests or the topic. And so one of the other ones that I listen to is one called The Exam Room, which is associated with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, of course, because it's all about food and whole food, plant-based stuff, which, I have an interest in. And it's been interesting to watch that grow. I mean, they're now, I think they've got like 10 million downloads. And so, they're done a decent job as far as what they do. But again, I'll pick and choose. And so, I think podcasts are important. I think the other thing I want to just point out is, I don't know if anybody's been a guest on podcasts. But that to me is a good way, as a stepping stone into this. So anyway, that's
right.
So The Exam Room is one of my other go-tos.
Cool. Amy.
So I tend to listen to them in the background, although there are a couple, like WTF with Mark Maron is probably my version of Joe Rogan. He has some amazingly insightful interviews with people. I don't think I could live without the Up First podcast. That's actually from NPR. That comes out at 6 a.m. every morning. It just encapsulates everything that's happened overnight for me. And then I can decide if I want to look at the newspaper or not. And there's also a great one, and excuse the language, but Unfuck Your Brain, which is for women entrepreneurs. And some of the insights on that podcast just kill me, because I think I'm the only person whose brain is wrapped around the axle this way. But it's fantastic for making me feel a lot less alone. I've done podcasts. I've been interviewed for multiple ones, audio only, which is my preference. This is enough video for me during the week.
Awesome. Who else? John.
I rarely listen to podcasts, but have a couple of questions based on what I've heard. So what else are you doing while you're listening to that podcast? Are you sitting quietly? Are you driving?
Is that an open question?
That's one question, yeah.
I'm usually driving. Like, I'm usually out on the road, so it's there. It's actually the one piece of help you can get that I believe that you can do when you're driving, because it's just audio. It's like listening to a record, right? Listening to music. So for me, it's usually when I'm driving or sitting at my desk.
Say for me, it's like when I'm doing chores, going grocery shopping, things like that. I think it's good. That's a good opportunity to listen to stuff.
I've had a problem. When I've tried it driving, 7 minutes later, I realized I was concentrating on driving and not listening. And I have a problem sitting in front of a TV and watching TV. So the notion of sitting for an hour to listen, but the notion of if I had chores, putting on headphones, that I could do it then. So that's very good advice.
John, I have chores for you if you need more.
No problem. I'll be happy to. I'll just stick on my headphones.
Michael.
You're on mute, Michael.
That's one way of keeping me quiet. I have a podcast of my own, and I work in the nonprofit association area. So the podcasts I listen to are within that, within my target audience. So one's called Association Chat, one's called Association Thrives. I also listen, someone else mentioned this Up First in the morning from NPR. I happen to listen to the Rachel Maddow podcast. I can't take our friend Rod. He just upsets me too much, but he's certainly there. I listen to them not in the car. In the car, I listen to books. I actually set time aside to listen to the podcast. I can't do podcasts in the car.
Yeah,
For much the same reason I think that John mentioned.
yeah.
Yeah, my own podcast is called Association Futures, and I do it both as an audio and a video. So in a video, it shows up on my YouTube channel.
Right. And we'll talk a little bit about the differences and why you might choose one over another, and what that might do in terms of your business growth, or at least building engagement within your business for potential prospects or even clients. Cool. All right. So you guys all good? Can we move on?
Sure.
So this is for Amy specific. So whenever we,
I love you.
and this-
Ken.
I know, we love you, Amy. I just did this for fun. So whenever we talk about podcasting, and certainly when I'm working with clients, we're looking at podcasts and think, is this something that you should be doing or not doing? And I've got my own personal view. But people tend to see and get wrapped up in what they see, especially through YouTube, and how intricate and how specialized and what we call the jazz hands, right? That Joe Rogan's, I think it's a great show. It's a very well produced show, but to me, it's a lot of jazz hands, which basically means you don't need that, right? If you're in that process in your mind right now, thinking about whether or not you actually want to start a podcast or not, I will tell you that here's what you need. That's it. That is literally the only thing that you need to have a podcast. And I'm showing wired headphones specifically on that shot because you don't want to use Bluetooth headphones for a podcast. They're horrible. They're horrible, 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 right? Wired will give you really good audio. You can literally record it, you can edit it, and you can send it off to a publishing platform straight from your phone. So you don't need all the fancy gizmos. That's the main point of this. So for those of us that have done podcasts, and again, I'm doing this really just to kind of set the stage, there's a number of things that you want to be thinking about. And it's a lot of stuff. First, you got to plan it, right? You got to plan what your podcast is going to be about. And I don't mean overall theme. I mean individual episodes of the podcast, right? You got to plan that stuff out. Then you kind of have to lay out your script, right? What am I going to say? Right? What is going to be the main points that I want to get over on the podcast? Now, this is assuming, guys, just for what it's worth, that this is you doing the podcast. It's not an interview. It's just you doing your podcast. All right. Then you got to record it on whatever you're going to record it on. Then you got to edit it. Then you got to publish it. And then you got to promote it. Every episode. This is the flow for every single episode. So there's a bit of work, right, that needs to get done. So I'm going to go, Michael, right, because you've got your own podcast. Would you say that, like, this is rough when you're looking at what you do? Is this roughly how you're doing it, or do you have a different method that shortcuts any of this?
I don't think there's much of a way to shortcut it. When I got into this, I had a friend who helped me build essentially a worksheet. So my worksheet is how I get it done. I interview other people. So what I do in advance is I have to, for promotional purposes, I collect a picture, a bio, you get the idea, set up the date on which it's going to be recorded. I record on Zoom. I don't make it any more difficult than that. And in addition to that, I create a series of questions. So part of my preparation is to have the questions done, which you mentioned as well, James. And it takes about an hour of preparation. Now it takes about an hour of preparation. Originally, it took a lot more. and it takes about an hour to record and build the promotions for it. I use an outside tech guy to put it up for me on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. But I think you've hit the nail on the head. Those are the basic pieces that you need. It's not expensive. If that's what, for those of you worried about what it costs, it's really not expensive. And you're able to generate a lot of potential clients, or at least for me, it has created a lot of potential clients.
Awesome. Yeah, I do my own everything. Like, I don't outsource the editing. I do it all inside one platform. And then that platform does the publishing to the various other, the Apples, the Spotifys, the Googles, et cetera, et cetera. Because I'm a glutton for punishment. But you can, right? I mean, there are plenty of people that will take raw footage, you send it to them, they'll add in your intro, your outro, they'll do all the edits. And of course, if it's audio, right, then it's even simpler, right, to do that. So you don't have to do all this stuff on your own. I think that's one of the bigger things that people get stuck on, is feeling that they've got to do all of this, guys. You really don't. You'll find someone on Fiverr for literally $10 that will go and do your editing for you and do all, and then just give you back the finished product for you to then upload to whatever platform is your choice, right, for doing the publishing piece, because that's the important part, is getting it published. If it just sits on your computer, then it's not going anywhere.
Hey,
Anybody got comments around this or thoughts? Amy, go.
so I have done Marshmallow Mondays and Foodie Fridays intermittently for the last 5 years. I put a connection in the chat where you can find them. They're super stream of consciousness. I did them because we found that we got a better response to video posts than we did to anything that was typed out, because nobody reads. Even on LinkedIn, nobody reads. What I found that I struggled with was content, which I think not unusual. And during the pandemic, we tried to do the thing with, okay, each week we're going to pick a specific topic. And then the things that popped were not things I expected to pop.
Right.
I would say, if anybody's thinking about doing it, a way to test it out and see if you're comfortable. We started all of ours on Facebook. We did Facebook Lives every Monday for 3 years with my last company. The first one I ever did was an Ask Me Anything, and it lasted 2.5 hours. I said, we're never doing that again.
I would have loved that. 2.5 hours of interaction.
You can go back and look at it. It's on the Marshmallow MBA page on Facebook. To your point about Fiverr, I do have somebody I'm working with now. We're going to relaunch those in January. There's just been too much upheaval this month. But if you want to see how not to do it, if you want to see the James Joyce way of doing podcasting, take a look at the 48 Blocks Fine Candy YouTube channel, because it is very stream of consciousness. So we hope we're going to clean that up for the new year.
Very cool. Awesome. Thank you. Tammy, you have a comment. Tommy Miller.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you said somebody else. Yes, I do have a question. For Amy, when you said Facebook Lives, did you just show your face? The reason why I'm asking, because I really don't want to show my face, and I've been looking up for faceless videos of how to do. Yeah.
I literally did it and still do them showing my face. I hate it. But we intersperse them with some recorded videos as well. But the Facebook Live, people want to see the face behind the brand. People wanted to see who was telling the story. And that's a huge challenge, because I have to remember to, I don't know, maybe throw some lipstick on and put my contact lenses in, as opposed to showing up like I do on any other day. Although there's some authenticity in showing up with no makeup, looking like you've just come out of the kitchen in my case.
Okay.
There's a lady called Maria Chezek, I think her name is. And I might have butchered that name. But she does a Facebook Live almost every morning from her kitchen. And she's got like 1 million followers. She doesn't care. And nor should you. Right? So there is a level of professionalism that we believe that we need to portray. And again, we get caught up in the comparison trap, looking at what other people are doing, and it looks all super professional. But people, to the point, Amy, is they love authenticity, right? They like you just being you. And that's the thing that attracts people. They like you just being you.
To a point, I
Right?
should say like that.
Yeah, so you have to watch it. Don't create too much complexity or resistance to this because of how you think people are going to perceive. They're not going to care. They just want to know you. So Tammy, start showing your face. That's what I'm saying.
I guess my other question, I'm sorry, is how do you, if you don't have an audience, find people? I mean, like, how do you find people if you don't have no audience?
The audience will find you. The audience will find you. Trust me. There are ways to do this, right? People start with no audience, but you have an audience. You have friends. You have family. You've got neighbors. You've got work friends. You've got people in your community. You have a network. That already exists, whether you like it or not. That's there. That's your first audience. And then from there, it will build. The audience will come to the content. Trust me, they just will. You just have to get started. You just have to get started. Sorry, Win, you've got your hand up. You have a comment, then we'll move on.
Yeah, so I have a question. So James, you said that you're using a platform that editing the video and the podcast and also publishing it. What platform are you using?
So because I do both video and audio, I use a thing called Riverside FM. And Riverside FM, to me, it's just like it's an outstanding platform. But that allows me to record in 4K, which is really cool. But it also allows me to do the edits right inside the platform. And then from there, I just export the file back out, stick it and publish it on YouTube, strip out the audio, do that on Buzzsprout. That sends it to Apple. And then I do a transcript and that gives me the blog.
Okay, great.
That's
Riverside FM, right?
Yes, sir.
And what do you say about the platform that update to a podcast again? I didn't get that part.
I use Buzzsprout only because it's simple.
Okay, Buzzsprout. Thank you.
I
have a YouTube already, and it's been only 2 months, but I get a lot of traction. We are 50,000 plus views now, and a lot of watch hours. So I want to do the same content to podcast as well. So to Tammy's point, you should be fine. Don't worry. I don't have any of my relatives or my friends on my network watching mine, but there are people finding you.
They will find you. They will find you. Cool. All right. Can we move on?
No, I did have one more question. That leads to my other point too. Like, I see so many like social media, like once you do your podcast, is there a specific one you would recommend to start with? Because I guess I just didn't want to get overwhelmed with like doing it on Facebook, or there's Instagram, there's LinkedIn, there's all these other social media. So what would you suggest?
I'm going to get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
But I'm happy to tell you right now is just start off with a straight audio podcast. Don't worry about all the bells, the whistles, the gizmos. Right. But by the way, the hardest part of getting started on a podcast is getting your content. Like, what am I going to speak about? That's usually where people get stuck, right? It's coming up with the ideas. So I'm going to show you how I do it. I'm not saying it's the best way. It's just how I do it. And that might be helpful. So talking about that, right? So if you were going to start a podcast, what would be the theme? Like, what would you want to have a podcast about? What would be interesting?
Mine was about the business of marshmallows because the previous company was Marshmallow MBA. And I think a lot of times people forget that small candy shops, small candy businesses are businesses. I thought that was super interesting. However, the audience did not find that nearly as interesting as just videos of marshmallows being cut.
Yes.
Hence the struggle. I think if you build it, they will come is not necessarily where I am right now. So we're rethinking, because who's the audience? Apparently the audience is not me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
I need women
mean,
in Jello apparently for the podcast.
women in Jello.
Check out where Joe Rogan started.
I'll sign up for that. Oh, I know. All right. So themes. What would you have a theme about? Does anybody have, let me go back and ask another question. Those of you that do not have a podcast, do you have any interest in starting a podcast? Or is it, I have an interest and I just haven't managed to figure out how to get going?
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, I think I've thought about just helping, just handling like small business marketing questions, like how do you get seen off the ground? I think that's a question we all have. I mean, that's the reason why we're all here, is just like, just talking through, how to run a PPC campaign for someone who doesn't know how to do it, or SEO or something like
Right.
that. Just handling small business problems. I think that'd be a fun podcast to do and have guests on, and it's just a question of time to do it and all that sort of thing.
Who else?
James, I've thought about it for a long time and just haven't done it. I guess it's my own procrastination about doing it. And I think one of the things that I know myself I've gotten hung up about is that, to your point, how many millions of podcasts are there out there? What is it I'm going to contribute? And I think one of the things to remember is that we each have our own way of presenting things, which will make an impact will impact people differently. And so that's the thing that I keep trying to remember. And one of these days I'll get off my, move forward on this thing.
Cool. Alex, Martina, you had your hand up. Are you thinking about a podcast or?
Are you
Yes.
talking about me? I'm sorry.
Actually, I
Alex.
love to be a
Oh,
guest.
Alex.
I'm sorry. I would love to be a guest on a podcast to highlight entrepreneurship, be more of an educator, and for first-time entrepreneurs, and kind of teach them the do's and don'ts of going out on their own. Just resorting to some of my own experience in the last 40 years. So I'd love to be a guest.
But you wouldn't want to have your own.
No, not yet.
I will tell you a really, really, a couple of quick stories. But I remember, you guys familiar with a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk? You guys all familiar with Gary V?
Yep.
Right? He runs a company called Vaynerchuk Media, started on a YouTube channel, like talking about wine from his dad's wine shop in New Jersey, blah, blah, blah. Right now he's a multimillionaire. Go figure. But I remember him having a conversation with a lady once about her podcast, and she goes, "It's going nowhere." And he asked her what it was about. And he goes, "Well, who's that interesting for?" She goes, "Well, it's interesting for me." He goes, "Okay, but wouldn't you rather have fun talking about something that was fun for a lot of people?" And she says, "Well, yeah." He goes, "So what are you really interested in?" And she was a massive Friends fan. She loved the TV show Friends. So she started a podcast talking about Friends, the TV show. And she garnished something like 275,000 subscribers. It had nothing to do with her business. Nothing to do with her business at all. But those 275,000 people, a small percentage were actually people that actually found their business and ended up becoming clients. I have, and I'm not proud of this, guys, but I'm being transparent. I have 57 subscribers on my YouTube channel because I did a really shit job of doing the YouTube channel. Excuse my language.
I have 14, James. It makes you feel better.
Yeah, right. I have, to this date, something like 18,000 downloads through my audio Buzzsprout channel. It's not a lot in comparison to a lot of people. But I can show you $50,000 of business that came from that podcast because it's the right audience. right? So you have to be, you kind of have to think on the scale of, do I need to be Joe Rogan, or do I just need to create a niche and an audience for myself that is in line with what it is I'm trying to do? And don't get fooled into believing you've got to have 1 million subscribers for this thing to actually help you in your business. Right? So you kind of need to think a little bit about that. So how would you use it to grow your business? Right? That's why we're here. That's what we're talking about. How could you use a podcast if in fact that's something you want to do, whether it's have your own, whether it's be a guest on somebody else's, right? Which I think is always good to do. So here's a couple of ideas. So Leadership Tea is a lady called Belinda Jackson Farrier, who did a presentation to 1 Million Cups about 6 months ago. She has a podcast with her good friend Shelby Smith Wilson. And what they've done is and her, Belinda and I had a conversation. She says, I don't know who's following me. Like, I don't know who these subscribers are. I don't know anything about them. But we've got a bunch. And so she used the podcast to launch her new leadership program. So she did the podcast, used the podcast to do some Facebook Lives, spoke about her program through Facebook Live, and she had something like 16 people put her new program into the shopping cart. Now, I don't know how many have currently signed up, but this was an avenue that she used her podcast to go and promote a program. Mike Shreve is a guy that I know pretty well. So he uses podcast as a marketing tool, right, to his list to create the tribe of would-be authors. So he talks a lot about how to start a book, how to create a book for your business, or how to create a book as a lead magnet, or how to become an author. Mike does 4 podcasts on a Sunday afternoon, straight into his iPhone. And then that gives him a podcast every week for that month. So at the start of every month, he just sits down on a Sunday afternoon, 15, 20 minutes, each podcast right into his iPhone. It doesn't have to get complicated. And then for Angela and I, our Business Success by Design podcast, we just use it to build authority and credibility, right? I mean, that's the only reason that's there. It gives us something to push out to our tribe, right, to our community on a regular basis that isn't an email, right? It's not an email. So they get a chance to listen to, my stupid Scottish accent for, 15 or 20 minutes. But that there, as small as it is, has generated a bunch of business for us. Because people say, oh, I listened to your podcast. I liked it. I watched your webinar. I liked the webinar. I booked a strategy call. Boom. Now they're in the program. So you have to kind of think a little bit about, if I were going to do this, what am I actually want to use it for? Like, what's its purpose? And those are really important questions to ask yourselves, guys. So that's the question, right? Is it worth the effort? Right? I don't know. For everybody's a little bit different. Everyone's a little bit different. What I do believe, and guys, check me on this, right? What I do believe is, you're all in business, you're all entrepreneurs, you all have expertise. The question is, how much do you want to share it? And how do you want to share it? Through what modality do you want to share it? Right? And I do believe that everyone's got something worth sharing, but the effort of the kind of whole podcast thing really comes down to, is it something that I want to expend energy on? And like I said, the editing piece is the thing that gets everyone stuck. I think the stats are that people who start a podcast get to 5, and like 90% stop at 5 because it's too much effort. But I believe there are ways to make it less effort, which is pass it off to somebody else, let them do your editing. So anybody got comments, any feedback on what I just said?
I have something that I was going to
Belinda,
say.
go.
One of the things that I would use it for is testimonials and telling stories. having guests, inviting them, having them talk about how they solve their challenges using my product, my service, or whatever it might be, and really getting into a deep dive into how they were stuck, with the pain points and all the other pieces, because I think that makes it really grabbing and people listen because you, and if you started out with real pain points, like I have my own business and I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to send my child to college, because all the money was going into the business or whatever it might have been. I mean, and then you just drive it right back into it that you came up with this idea for the business and the business was growing, but you were stuck and you were looking for all these other types of things. And then you discovered podcasts and you found that the podcasts were a key to getting your word out in a non-traditional way from the past where you had to send out a press release and you had to do all these other things. It's like being able to just do it yourself and get it out there. And there are so many vehicles where you can get it out there.
I'm going to say you shouldn't do this if it's going to be stressful. Right? It's not supposed to create stress in your business or your life. It's something you go and you go, this is actually a kind of fun thing to do. Right. But I love that idea of using it to bring people in and talk about their experiences, not yours,
right,
but what they've gone through and how they've overcome difficulty and or tragedy or trauma or depending what space you're in, because people want that, right? People want that. The top two themes in podcasting, believe it or not, comedy is number one, crime is number two.
Of course. So it makes
comedy
a
and
lot of
crime
sense.
couldn't be more like apart, right? Right? But comedy and crime are the two largest listens to themes in podcasts. Incredible. John, question, comment.
Yeah, so I'm such a novice, but the notion of being on other person's podcasts is analogous to being a presenter at someone else's webinar or conference. And that's valuable. It's a lot easier to be a guest speaker at someone else's program than put on the entire program. So for someone like me, the notion of identifying, and this is the question, identifying the influencers in the marketing and sales area that would be relevant, perhaps, who do podcasts, conceivably might be to the right audience.
Right.
And that could be a good strategy. Okay.
Visibility.
By the way, I love the notion of comedy or crime. I understand that completely because person is either good or person is evil, and it's 50-50, by the way.
By the way, yes, it is.
Yeah, research Locke and Hobbes. They're two philosophers in the late 1800s. But also, so what you're telling me is I should start a podcast about John Rutenberg's offensive football scheme. That would draw
I
an
don't know
audience.
I don't know if that's comedy or crime, John. I would.
Oh no, we gain a lot of yards in Mayo.
It could be both, and then you're a double winner.
Yeah, awesome. All right, Tommy, quick comment, and then we're going to move into the final piece.
Yeah, I had a comment. I do think it's worth it, but I also have a question. When it comes down to podcasts, what has been your take about the duration of having the podcast? Like when you do each one, do you do it like over 20 minutes, 30 minutes? What has been your success?
That's a great question. And I don't know if you knew what the next slide was that was coming up. Just
I really don't.
Right. So think about how people consume, right? On a blog, these are the latest stats, 5 to 10 minutes on a blog. That's what it'll take you to read the blog content of, 1,000 to 1,500 words. YouTube, 3 to 5 minutes. Social media, 1 minute. That's their consumption. On a podcast, 30 minutes plus. So when you think about how people consume right? And the length of time that they're prepared to sit and consume your content. If the content is good, someone will sit and listen to you talk for 30 minutes. My personal belief, and I have no empirical evidence to support this, it's just a belief. I think a podcast of 15 to 20 minutes is just about right. Unless you've built up a really, really good following and tribe who are prepared to listen to you for 45 minutes or longer. But my good friend, I say my good friend, but Amy Porterfield, who I think is one of the best at doing this, generally she's about 20, 25 minutes. And she's got following of hundreds of thousands. I think if 15 to 20 minutes is probably long enough. But it really depends on your audience, and it depends what you're trying to get done. So again, it's not something you overthink. But if you can put together, a podcast every other week for 20, 25 minutes, I think that's probably worth it. Michael.
Well, in line with what you just said, James, I do an every other week podcast, and my own data shows that 30 to 40 minutes, that's the limit. If you get much past 40 minutes, it's really bad. But somewhere between 20 and 30 is optimal. Once you get to 30, there's a big drop. There's a big drop off. So that's good advice to everybody, which, it doesn't mean you have to spend a whole ton of time doing this. You really don't.
Right. You don't. It's work, but it's not as complicated as you might think. But it's work. So we would tell you right now, if you're thinking about doing this and you want to move into just audio only, right? Then go check out Shanda Studio. This is Doomy's platform. He gives you 2 hours a month for free right now. All right. And so, well, 2 hours isn't much. 2 hours is plenty. If you're going to rip and do 15, 20 minute, 2 a month, it's plenty of time. It also gives you a chance to do some practice stuff as well, right? Without burning up money, because it's 2 hours again. You can practice your podcast. But Shanda Studio, I think, is a great place because it's been designed to make this process seamless and stress-free. And Doomy will tell you that you can upload a file and have it all ready to publish in less than 10 minutes. Right? Less than 10 minutes. So you might want to go check that out. Take a screenshot of this, guys, if you want, but this is a prompt I use in ChatGPT to generate content ideas for everything, basically. So feel free if you want to take a screenshot of this. I'll leave it for a second. So I use ChatGPT for a lot of stuff in terms of generating ideas, right? Because I'm not good at working from a blank page. This is one that I've used, and the output that I get from this gives me this. So it actually gives me a table of mistakes, fears, desires, frustrations, symptoms of my ideal client, and I take those and I create content around those ideas. Just saying, right? I don't want to think too hard, seriously. So just quick top 5 questions, right? Understand what your goal is going to be, what topics you're going to cover. Think about who your ideal listener really is as you go into this. Do you have the equipment you need? If you've got a phone, you've got everything you need right now. Seriously, don't overthink it. And then just how you're going to promote it, right? These are all questions that you really have to kind of dive into and think about. Otherwise, you'll get into this, you'll get frustrated about, I'm not getting the number of downloads, I'm not getting this, I'm not getting subscribers. Don't worry about it. But you need to be thinking about these things as you dive in. So, some resources, if you're thinking about it, Pat Flynn at SPI, really good. The Pod Sound School, really good. Riverside FM is a platform that I use, but I like them because they do a lot of training videos, right? How to begin, how to get started. They can go really deep or not, really good. And then Think Media. Those are my kind of top 4 places that I would go to. If I'm thinking about starting a podcast, I'd go there and look for beginners. That's it. Just go for beginners and you'll find everything that you need, in my opinion. So we're done with that. So next week's presenter, Jeff Saval.
Kudos to
from
Lawson.
What? Come on.
Kudos, man. That was great.
Wasn't it bad for 24 hours notice?
Exactly.
So let's just go there.
Do you want me to take over, or do you want to continue,
Yeah,
James?
yeah. Go on, Melinda. You take it. I'll do the slides, but you do it for you.
Cool. Next week we've got Jeff Saval, if I'm saying it right, at Acceleron Business Funding. And we're really looking forward to his presentation. Does anybody know what kind of guests he'd like there that we could also invite? It gives us an excuse to invite more people to our meetings, and always looking at getting more people at our meetings.
So Melinda, Jeff, who was referred to us by Alex Mattini, is a specialized lender. He's going to talk, his challenge is how to increase awareness by educating a potential borrower about loans that don't necessarily require personal guarantees. And that's relevant.
And that's a
Very
really hot
specific.
topic for everybody who has their own business and who's looking for
Sure. So please join us, and please bring a friend or business colleague.
Just wanted to take advantage of that. We're also always looking for organizers. We've got a lot of new organizers helping us. We divide and conquer. We change jobs and do different things each time. We meet Monday mornings for a little over a half an hour, just to get us ready for Wednesday. And we also have our ambassadors that also help us promote the meetings and get people to come and follow up for us. Presenter schedule next week, as we said, we have it filled. We are not meeting on Thanksgiving week, and then we're looking at December, and we only have a couple of weeks in December because the 25th is Christmas, obviously, and the 1st is probably also New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, so I'm not sure if we're meeting then. But if you know anybody who may want to present, we would love to have the recommendation. You can introduce us to them or give us a phone number, and so we can follow up and help us get our pipeline filled. Next slide. Thank you. Spread the word. We're on, obviously, I'm going to say Twitter instead of calling it X or whatever.
We're never
LinkedIn,
calling it X ever.
It's like, oh, I can't do it. I'd rather just help spread the word. We're on social media. Follow the links. This is a good QR code, so you've got all of our links in one place. We're also obviously on YouTube, where you can see all these videos, and help us grow our group. And stick around afterwards. Right now, we have open networking for a little bit, and join the conversation. Thank you for coming.
Awesome.
See you next week.
You want to stop recording?
Thank you.
Good idea.
Let me find my
I'll
button.
stop sharing. There we go.
Excellent.
So, guys, was that useful? Like, just as a
That was very